Welcome to Splice. Yeah, you're right. All right. We got a beautiful horse here for the carnival season. Got my carnival fringe on. Everybody's got a cocktail. Come on back. We're just getting started. What's happening? Welcome to Splice. We have two excellent poets tonight, Jace and Laura. And Rodrigo is going to come up first and introduce Jace. And then I'll come up and introduce Laura. And Laura will read. And then we will go to the Chewbacca's parade down the street. If you get a little snacky at any point, there is some Kaluda's king cake over there, sliced up nicely. If you get the baby, you got to bring the next king cake to Splice. That's how it works. Y'all know the rules. Without further ado, Rodrigo Toscano.
Hey, all. Thanks for coming out. For several decades now, certain quarters of the national poetry scene have been talking about intra-genre or multi-genre writing, but when we closely inspect these products, we often find that they precisely constitute the genre they purport to be stretching out or fleeing from. We're talking about micro-dial turns of fiction, flash, lyric, narrative poetry, and the big fluffy, memoirism. Jace Brittain's writings belongs in the category of, though it's contradictory to say so, no genre. So the question you might ask is, why is Jace reading for this self-declared poetry series? And that question belongs in the category of an answer. What precedes any particular poetry, as we bang on here every month, is poetics. That is, the conscious displaying of all the elements that would go into a poetry, whether it does so or not, at whatever volumes and manner of doing so. That's a de minimis practice we embrace here at the Splice. And so, simply put, Jace nails that maximal splaying of literary elements and then some. The three books I spent reading this week in paradisical weather, my fellow San Diegan Jace can attest, are the Death Ray Gun Patent Papers, The Sorcererer, and Telling of the Bees, Curios by Jace Brittain. That last subtitle, Curios, in the sense of novel, rare, or bizarre, encapsulates so much of what I think of this writing as a whole. First off, as most writers stay in a resolution range of -1 times to 2 times resolution, the Jace device starts at about -10 times to -50 times. I spent a good 2 hours completely wrapped by the text's microscopic squiggly word strings. And those word acts, literally every construct was of interest to me, all went to build a unique narrative structure that is at once incisive, darkly humorous, and remarkable, celebrating an intricate interweaving of body, mind, and language. This distinctive writing, which intertwines realism and fantasy, not only rejects the deceptive assurances of standard college drill poetics, but it swiftly shuttles us into that no-genre zone where so much R&D gets done. But Jace is not a lone astronaut. He belongs to a unique and increasingly organized group of emerging writers that shoot way past what's considered acceptable in poetry, way past institutionally incentivized limits. Writers like Rachel Zavecz, Olga Mikhailova, Chris Campagnoni, Paul Cunningham, Will Cordero, Nam Hoang Tran, Stephanie Russell, and of course Laura Paul. Each of these writers, in my opinion, are well positioned to easily outfox the AI normie poetry assemblers that are surely forthcoming. And I am sure that whatever Jace comes up with next will be as far-reaching and as fascinating as what we're about to hear tonight. And I should add, too, that we have the good fortune to have 2 local, now national, magazines that track the evolution of writing like Jace's, Tilted House and Mercury Furs. And for us at the Splice, that's what it's all about, a catholicity of efforts. Enough space junk. Jace Brittain is the author of the novels Sorcererer by Schism Press. Their writing and translations have appeared in or are forthcoming from Annulet, Propagule, ANMLY, Grotto Journal, Puerto del Sol, Dream Pop Journal, and others. With the poet and book artist Rachel Zavecz, they run the small press Carrion Bloom Books. Yeah, the small press Carrion Bloom Books. Welcome, Jace.
Thank you. Co nun drum. All dried up and drying up and crying, only the sounds of tears not falling. What luck, what rousy wrung luck. In this heat, they said, don't start with the weather, but that's all there is for some folks like him. When Felix understands something, he doesn't believe it. A practice. I submit to the cannibals I'm becoming. A near certainty Felix fell, fallen still, against the current situation in which he could only guess that somehow he had lost his elasticity and collapsed after one violent expectoration. Poor me, thought Felix, now scrunched up, ass up, with little motor control, drooling, dirty, bloody, face down on the cracked pavement in the sun, thinking about how snails looked, how snails had looked, how snails had looked when he had had them inching all over his chest, a desperate and failed cure for what ails him. A failed cure since really they had been eating him alive, hadn't they? Alchemia 2. The snails, those runic tracers that had taken the time plotting out their graveyards on Felix's chest, a cure, a guess, an unnamed prayer, a slow mutilation. The living division of the alchemic grocery list, the beast slow and slovenly fed on him, sticky paths, almost invisible except to the readers, the mages, the white-coat sages quacking around his strapped-down gurney bed. Eaten alive and neither the last nor the least of it. The big question then being one of cannibalization, answered in an infinite loop of sputtering and gross slime. Become snail. You eats what you are. Transformation isn't very becoming, Felix thought, and then he farted. I said static is noise, and I said static is stillness, and I said static is movement, and I said static is eat, say. Eat, say, there are many regrettable sentences to return to the source. Eat, say, everything regurgitated is gold. Don't be what's gnawing inside out. Don't be shell chunked nothing or nothing at all. If they ever find my dirty picture, which I took of Owen Wister, the West will be unwon. His vomit dreams, then, or perhaps an amalgamation of its many celled visions, of every meal that had activated their hum, gotten a rise out of their so-to-speaks, and then every meal they've become in the process. Oh my God, everything is alive, Felix thinks, in sharing this vision with those he has expelled. Can a snail dream itself a moth, and must those images then unveil more slowly than that? Equivalence 1, according to the order of the jar and splendors, the weapon commonly called the double-edged sword is actually a misnomer upset by the hilt. Even as metaphor, there are only two true double-edged swords. The first is illegibility, ironically itself a misnomer and impossible as a word, but as action said they, the only simultaneous approach to liberty and kinship. Astronomia 2, love. What a hoot about love darts. He hadn't even known until he felt the diminutive sting, the charm of which was lost on him, the sting, too, in seconds. Snails, you see, have a little love dart, distinct from genitalia, which expelled and lodged in another body, casts a little spell, increases successful mating, reproduction by as much as 770%, OG. Cupids, he knows the stories come from that, or maybe. The nature books at the sanatorium library are black with dried expectorate. Sometimes a word will seem to rise from the dark and dry sea, the ridges of the characters surfacing in the right light. He can't decide if snails are one or the other or both, when or whether they have love darts to spare. Astronomia 4, self. Obelisk or leaning tower stick in the muck, still a tool to measure the earth, and everything in it with some degree of accuracy. The sunlight, and to tell the time, sunlight and 20,000 paces to tell if it's round, and spinning, and maybe more quickly than ever, and Felix is like most, he thinks he's just still trying to get his bearings. I'm browsing lists of angels all the time. The Destroyer, Philosophia. Oswalda Zucca of primary co-conspiracy is descended from the honest of Antiquera, and thus rightly of the Order of the Jar and Splendors, whose bronze emblem she kept close and hidden on the grounds, despite the betrayal and expulsion from which she suffered, and landed as an illness in the same place as he and her, coding always in part dedicated to the promises of uninterrupted service to current-lilied she. Essex. Oz, her sister had called her, and Oz she thought of herself, she thought. How one thought of oneself, and for example, one's arm as it swept across the page, and the code followed to make divine of notches and ticks. O code, for example, os, oso, and so-so, sos, osursa, no, so, no, solecism at work, agog or play, so, o glossally. We've lost the thread. Tide zone, nay. Summer's wanderers' worlds belong to ranges of bumping, jostling phytoplanktons, and in an Oswalda imagining field find her dunking foot as such a marvelous invader and bringer of destruction. The waves makes she of the still, watery planet changes unimaginable. She cracks a smile of mesocosmic horror to every new algae and under the sun. How nice for such a moon pool to morph itself into the floor. How fine a capability to visit without being a visitor. Wily curating she, do not ask what it is in maze breeze cast over the water to make eukaryotic rings at ankles grasping hairs. Its bloom signals cooing, fickle grasping winter's retreat, and Walda, lily-cranted she could just about sing it away. Rooms away, and time again Felix recoiled. So many perished thoughts around his fingers, a web, a wind, a biting scroll, a whirl, a corkscrew curlicue of reasons. The living water meant a blaring red thread. A cross-haired knot, he might screw his eyes just to see them. Squint with all your, even if without seeing, knows he. Danger below evidenced by its drowning population, the higher the hospital climbed, or even the drier the climbs, the betterer. Any medium to such a world must be corrupted, tentacular. Hadn't Felix ever learned to swim? Long were those days, but for comfort of sick little stenches the sun wrung from spumy stranded pockets in the rocks, ringing in your those intake breathed some sacked casement awake, some as to shaved hearts smelling salts, rank revivre. Interannual fluctuations among those potted charging million periwinkling chitinous barnacled beings as much as each other as against and though and through thick thin cloudy as intersex as intercessant as a god might tell the time by them that lives and dies in those zones in a year. One whelk, say, abrasive, bubbleted speech, and advances in dialect such that one might come home from a long day and find one's wife speaking so that, and whether one had a wife, a note in one's own handwriting that one cannot make it out. A sudden surge so that one can't cry it out and get carried away, slip beneath the waves in delicate relief. What keeps them there from drying out? Why not them there swept out to sea? Says one to them, how then, poor me? And for all that comes crawling back, there's permanence as well. What the local meteorologists called an inland hurricane struck Salt Lake City in the spring of 2020. Inland hurricane, Salt Lake. Auto play, auto stop. tire scratch to vomitous crunch, turn signal, presage, what you ate, city sea, salt, water fresh, spoilt, stinked, ran piped and swam I, a long oar, current by, hurricane over Bonneville Lake today, tree whole 100, grew to 1,000 years, grew to through your windscreen, face, headrest, glass again. Ah, toxic cross freeze through your windscreen, face, headrest, glass again. Hurricane over the desert of Bonneville Lake today. Bird's eye, deer spleen, cutthroat, kidney, dressed and descaled, molecules divined, how respected, pick me up some extra spicy bovine, or just read 'em signs. Oh, edible carnal, disinfect your knives. Can't taste scrapies. It's okay, I wasn't wasting my brain anyways. Feed it madly back to me, what we see we'll see. Hurry up, renderer. Just jelly. Barber 1, my courtyard is symptom, spontan rise, spontan inky, spontanasm, spontan action, spontan fold into, spontan know when to fold into, spontan infection and fold into, folded forms, transmiss, spontan, undervalue, unfold, the noise, fold, overvalue. Have I any messages? Fold responsiveness, too indelicate a word. Fold intelligence, too gut a word. Espionage, eco-terra, eco-spontan. Matter transport, data transfix, spion, someone reading my messages. Is spy, is sent, through the tick of the sounder, SOS spontan, SOSO, protein, mistakes, me shakes, a digestion sound, a conscience cleared. Passed through, so are you my co-conspiratorial reading? My terra plot? My co-cotoplot, a plant? Please don't spoil my day, I'm my away and only see things. Cell, co-in comatirand, they call us animal, my love. Have you any messages from or for the cause? Folded form, spontan arts und kräftig, spion my creep, my peeping Tom Clancy protag, not a peep. Are you reading my messages? When I say spontan, you know the noise of that inky plot. They all read, are you smarter than a gut germ? Distant interiors. Geologic, stricken, chalky, Albion, Berg, glaciate panic, Layern and Layern, doubly deep, Zeit, Geist, spooky, Naysayern, inert, tragaic, spinal floss, regloss, guttermouth, senseless, sinless, signless, unthing, behold, our private little biome. Bathroom problems, behold a glass house panic, are engulfed in flames orangery. No melted glass musa, no Gemüse bar, nor shade, no chamois, no. An ounce of Joe Hill's ashes in a pint of Union beer in a basement bar in Chicago is transubstantiation. Abolish the Police is a poem which reveals the short history of US policing, strikebreakers and racist mobs who rented office space. A history that can be kept short if you act fast. The OED is a lot of words about horses, which betray a certain class bias. Fatal Fiend. Not too long dead, succumbing not too long, a task, my engraving, which under I'll molder. A synced sunk, a no more dancing curse. Caught something called something like fossil fuel nostalgic. On We Ford Dissembly line, how every frame of film ever is stock material, rendered animal parts, sing wind in a skull emptied of every idea ever. Used to say, if an ocean boiled, it'd cook a lot of fish. Some jokes age in deep time. Smell, not now, moldy. Whiff, a mush floor of rose petals plucked. Of this stuff, wiles which reek just a bit capsized. Bowls held fire, and acrid all things exchanged. Total poultry biomass. A chicken liver's pail is calamity. Anachrone buzz to one thirsting, stumbling fly, not molting, yes, mussy, and maddened by kissing. A kiss, a curse, a feeling I will see a comin', not too long, absent. V reciprocate. V virtual. V many versions. Futures, a paltry liver's pail, yet let's procreate away in it. No, just don't touch face or hair. Don't all fluids turn your fire bowels. SOS, XOX, oh, don't touch me. Oh, don't not touching turn you in your grave. Yet not yet too multi to help me polish off the wine so I'll be not thirsty in the grave. Have you finished your bucket of louse eggs? Oh, kiss me then, I'm starving. Micro-miniatures of Hagop Sandalchian, 1990. Sewing needle, human hair. Camel Eye, Prisoner's Cinema, Blasphemy of Blank's Eyelidless Transparency, Obscene Saint of Smallnesses, his hair on the needle's head. Salome's Dance and Salome's Kiss. Eternally frozen in a mass, the button which pulls back the curtain, which reveals enough seeing way clear to forgive the guillotine. The guillotine is a magnifying lens. The whole body is a virtual image. The Death Ray Gun Patent Papers is a dazzling bit of nonfiction submitted to the US Patent Office in 1921. Listen to this. Theatrical device, application filed, December 30th, 1921. Serial number 525983, renewed January 9th, 1924. In testimony that I claim the foregoing as my own, I affix my signature, Leon Levy. A dream in which my great-grandmother Edith Packard, magician's assistant and heiress absconditus, hands me a dark-tinted salmonish balloon, which in another room later becomes a light terracotta-colored ferry ticket. Admit one. A distant dead relative, and yet a dream in which a great-grandmother hands me a terracotta salmon ticket. She tells me what makes for a good audience member. First, a willingness, or even wanting, to be made a fool. It's me again. Selling a booker on Great Leon's next grand trick, saying better, even, then, an illusion called A Woman Shot Through with Ribbons. It's Edith Packard on the line. Says the magic death ray requires a brave girl of only 5'2". To see it, you'd believe a woman had been shot from a cannon and clear through a solid sheet of metal. And over there, she'd appear and say the punchline. It's me again. Laughter, awe, stage right from behind a solid metal sheet in a dream, on the back of a photograph, it's me again. A story I know I believe is fact, in which into the river goes a great-great-grandfather, the great Leon, and into the river goes Harry Houdini, both in chains and escape contest. Into the river in theater chains goes a great-great-grandfather, Leon Harry Levy, a magician and stage performer who changed his name to Leon Leon, the Great Leon, spelled in blazing lights. In the story, Into the River in chains and a straitjacket goes Leon, and into the river in identical chains and a straitjacket goes Houdini. And out of the water escapes Leon, and the way it's always told, only just 4 seconds slower than Houdini. Our Leon, a loser by only... Should be him played by Tony Curtis in the movies. Orson Welles in competition for the role, him kissing Janet Leigh, freezing cold water, maybe even less than 4 seconds. Under the water, our Leon, I wonder, would he, in those 2.5 minutes, submerged and doubly bound, maintain the face of a performer with the audience on the other side of the watery screen? The way a member of the family tells the story, Leon always keeps his composure. Beneath the curtain and river's current, does an eye cast upstream, a spy, bound and drowned and paler than he's ever been, so held Houdini? Above, the audience void will perceive nothing written on the surface of the water. Edith Packard married a vaudeville magician and left her family fortune, automobile miraculous, behind. Around 1919, she must have. A great-great-grandmother married a vaudeville magician and must have seen the illustrations of the magic death ray, in which a woman of 5'2", helmeted with a little blitzkrieg spike, depicted lying down in the barrel of a cannon, an apparatus which even in the white space of the patent papers and this imaginary cross-section, this apparatus looks like a tight fit. Imagine, as a magician's assistant must have, the fire and flight. This woman's body, horizontal shot through a solid sheet of metal, a horizontal plunge surfacing on the other side. It's me again. In the plans, the trick which she was party to elided the turn, the miraculous part. Such fiction is afforded to the magician. The stakes are designed for the believer. The death ray gun is a generic pleasure to those who can afford the fiction. The ticket buys you whatever you'll believe. This is not fiction. This is a suicide heat map. Drowners of the Charles River. There's the Anderson Memorial Bridge and the plaque memorializing Faulkner's Quentin Compson, fictional drowner. The plunge is a point, punctuation against the idea of flowing waters, like a photograph of Harry Houdini, bound and preparing to dive. Vaudeville flyer copy. Just one thin dime grants admission to the castle of Eulaw in Yonkers, and a world of magics both ancient and strange. They molder where I'll molder, somewhere beneath the surface of. In any case, the plunge describes the trespass of the surface boundary, water, soil, a solid sheet of metal, a silver finger, the medium manifests from her mouth, the veil, the veil, the veil, the veil. The surface describes the return. The plunge is punctuation. The flow of the river has no more meaning to the submerged than the rotation of the earth to those engraved. Sawed in half, as the old trick goes, is entirely such a play of surfaces. Sawteeth grin bloody, so they swear like a test audience for Hitchcock's Psycho, who swears they saw the knife pierce the skin. This is the plunge. The plunge is the same to the dowser in the well, the plunge to the drunken and the drowners. A great-great-grandfather pictured here, as a boy, Carl Johansson, dead in his 20s, pictured here. Carl Johansson drowned drunk in the Charles River, a $1 silver certificate note in his pocket, dead in his 20s, into the river after a drunkard too and a would-be drowner, into the river to save and somehow anyhow swim. The phonographs of Hades in the brain are tunnels. They rewind themselves. A yellowed envelope open to tear and inscribed on the outside, "Dollar found in my brother Carl's pocket when he was drowned. Should be given to Carla." A dividing line, the words grand ring or hinge. Another dividing line, small diamond, a line. 8 squares folded, $1 silver silver certificate, 1899, serial number R6318724. Carla, a daughter of a father found dead in his 20s, she an infant with $1 silver to her name. Into the river, Carl Johansson, through a solid sheet of metal, Edie, 5'2", into the water chains, Leon, the great Leon. In a blurry scan of the Death Ray Patent Papers renewal document, serial number 525983, I'm initially disappointed by the length and opacity of indexical language. A bar, which we will hereafter call the can support 14, is attached rigidly to solid plate 7 by means of bolts or studs, positioning said support parallel to and substantially distant from solid plate 7. A flange 18 is formed around the star trap 17, projecting outwardly and forming a cannon muzzle housing 41. In the back of the cannon support 14 is formed a longitudinal recess forming a housing 19 to conceal 2 roller springs, 20 and 21, which are horizontally disposed therein. The dummy cannon support 47 is positioned at the center of the frame with the cannon attached there too. A document in which I speak through to a great-great-grandfather, I think about tuning and attuning. I think about a seance on a rainy afternoon. I imagine the sounds which Rilke dreams coming through as a phonograph stylus traces the sutures of a human skull. I wonder what it means to be taken in by a family or by a charlatan. Positioning said support parallel to and substantially distant from said solid plate number 7, a flange 18 is formed around the star trap 17, and so on, and it becomes kind of hard to spot the trick in lines 68 to 70 at the end of the section titled Operation. The person, animal, or other projectile is now projected by means of springs, air, or other pressure. Near the beginning there is this. My invention is a theatrical device for the amusement of audiences, an object being to seemingly project a person through a solid. Another object is to construct a device so simple in appearance that it may be inspected without disclosing its operative parts. It fires over there. And over there, across the stage, you'll swear you see a woman pass through solid metal. This is the plunge. And over there, she'll surface and say the line again. It's me again. Thank you.
Keep it going for Jace. Keep it going. All right, all right. There's some seats over here if y'all want to come in. If you don't, that's fine too. Laura Paul, who's up next, is a writer and artist published in the Brooklyn Rail, Los Angeles Review of Books, Tarpaulin Sky Magazine, Pangyrus, Minor Literature's Dream Pop Journal, and other outlets. Her work has been exhibited at the Armory Center for the Arts, Other Places Art Fair, LA Zine Fest, and West Hollywood Book Fair. She earned her BA in Comparative History of Ideas from the University of Washington and her MA in Cinema and Media Studies from UCLA. Her book, Film Elegy, was released in October 24 from Problem Press. To find out more, visit laurapaulwriter.com. In the Russian filmmaker Andrei Tarkovsky's book, Sculpting in Time, he theorizes that the dominant, all-powerful factor of the film image is rhythm, expressing the course of time within the frame. This is the main formative element of cinema. The distinctive time running through the shots makes the film unique, just as the sense of poetic time gives poetry its particular individuality. The sense of poetic time, that is, how narrative dances with syntax, in Laura Paul's Film Elegy, centers on carefully composed frames. The frames in these poems are phrases, images, rhetoric, criticisms, and sometimes a lingering or even broken or invented word, visually acknowledged on the page by pipes, periods, and asterisks that function as frames, sprockets, and light. Each phrase, a frame flashed with a full spectrum of technique. There are intimate close-ups, layered compositions, dynamic off-center compositions, silhouetted figures, creeping zooms, over-the-shoulder shots, and expansive wide shots. These create an incredible parataxis that gels in the elegiac chemicals of an artistic life and an earnest relationship with the late Amy Halpern. In these poems, a close listener can hear the metaphorical 16mm film loops slipping loose, almost jamming, then spitting back into the take-up reel as we turn the page. These wigglings and flickerings pressurize the poems in a distinctly analog and human way. We ask that you silence all electronic devices, and we thank you for choosing the Splice Theater this evening. Please welcome to the Splice stage, Laura Paul.
Thank you for that, Sean. We are going to transform this space into a theater tonight. I'm going to be reading from my new book, Film Elegy, which came out in October. I also have some, what I said to Jace was B-roll. I have some earlier film poems and some extra special stuff that hasn't been published or performed before. And so we're going to really transform the night into a celebration of film and time and those that came before us. So in the book, it is formatted so you feel like you're in a theater space, which sometimes is kind of an interesting challenge to read, since it's very much supposed to be a material object that you can look at. And since these are very heavy for me to fly with and I don't want to fly home with them, tonight I'm going to pass out copies so you can look through them while I read. There's still going to be a few, so don't feel like if you miss out on it, that there's not more. It'll be like church, you know, you have like your psalm book and you can like, read along or something. Hold on. You don't have to sing along because I do bounce around. You can at least have a visual representation of what I am doing on the page. I was inspired to write film elegy because, especially since the pandemic, I was thinking a lot about the end of an era in film as a physical medium. But what ultimately spurred it was the death of a filmmaker I worked for named Amy Halpern. She was mainly an experimental filmmaker, and she passed away in 2022. So after her passing, I immediately wrote this book, and it's my tribute to kind of this, reflecting both on her life and my experience as her apprentice, but also trying to kind of conceptualize what I experienced and what was happening before me in terms of an industrial history with image making. I caught the tail end of an already dead zombie film era, where the old ones would lament nitrate, and it got under my skin, and it lit me on fire, and it poisoned my air, and taught me about unions, and projectors, and safety features, of the directors that didn't dictate death to come down, land right on top of the heads of their extras. I wanted to turn my grief, my suffering, into a non-Hollywood production. Chorus line, dance girls, feathers twirling, and a procession of a pre-code era. I would date you similarly, before bullshit, a wild woman who would allow for the abortion to be shown on the screen. I would date you similarly to me, but yet the burden I've placed on myself of remembering for you, this era gone. Ironically, I've tried to capture in language the writer who considers the image, whose images will not be considered. I am trying to capture you, me, the rest of it, the experience of your studio, and the way you lived by frames. Let's do a reenactment of every dark room we ever sat in together, the breath we shared, the light that entered the inside of both of our bodies. Your body now with sprockets, my heart now in flames. A graveyard scene, one sappy and melancholy, not the wild wave of raving, of grief and madness, of the loss felt by the lack of theaters, of the theater closures, our porn palaces of our grief and madness, and scenes of the haunting, followed by black. I burn bright for you, for our love of images, and silver so combustible. My unstable nitrate heart, so ready to ignite. In this century of the American horror movie, the ones that make money, the horror makes money, the horror is cheap to film, the horror is plentiful, the horror of the casting couch is, the background, the rear view projection, is that black is the first to die.
Yes. We should sit right here, girls. Love it. Do it. That works. Oh my God.
And you, a snake film, an Ouroboros, a film reel, the beginning, a frame, inserted into the back of the strip. Writing about Hollywood when Hollywood's not there, when Hollywood's gone. Los Angeles can't play itself because it hasn't resolved a temporary set on a top of a village of Tongva, a disposable labor force. May the force be with you, Wobblies, and the women who weren't included. You wanted the women not to be eaten by vultures, picked apart and raised by the criticism of the collective parasitic leeching, thankful every day for the one woman who said no, for the one who led, for the one who let her language break, her dress fall, her guard unhinge, her refusal shine huge like an explosion. What is lost is now, and that is what we work with. But I cannot manufacture ways to be more wild. You're teaching me to be brave, to allow for my heart to burn uncontrollably. What is consciousness? Do you know? Are you roping around right now? Golden, MGN, or Goldwind? You are a gold wind now. Winding and windy, most of our days spent on the screen, in the theater, of refracting light, of light bulbs shot into flames, in the gilded palaces of fortune, of entertainment, like temples, labor temples, to a collective art. In this, I mourn film and cinema. I cry tears of lubricating fluid for the machines of our projections. This is why I ask you directly. My images, unbudgeted, pushed so deep down, they became an internal cinema to share. Your films will be projected. Your life becomes a projection of what everyone else thought. Was that you that, though, making your way up the stairs of the theater? So I don't know if you noticed, but there's a giant white horse next to me. I like reading these tribute poems to the dead because they like to say hello and like pop up in special ways. So a long time ago, I actually wrote a poem with a reference to David Lynch, and it's a Hollywood poem. And before he passed away, I was actually planning on reading it tonight. I don't know if you know, I don't know why that's there, but there is a white horse in Twin Peaks. So I guess David's here in the form of a giant plastic white horse. Yeah, so just make sure to say hi on your way out, I guess. David was actually a friend of a friend. I used to work in the film industry for a long time, and I lived in Los Angeles for a decade. And now this is kind of common knowledge and it's online, but he lived in the Hollywood Hills, and his house was actually used in the film Lost Highway, if you've seen his film Lost Highway. And it's a very iconic, stark, concrete house. So when I was living there, it was very much this kind of landmark in the neighborhood. So I ended up writing a poem about his house. So this ended up being a little tribute to David, and since he passed away, I've been very touched by seeing everyone's, talking about how much he meant to them, and so this is my contribution. The poem is called Coming Up on Our Right. The tour bus exemplifies Los Angeles. I had been blasting at the Fish Houses by Elizabeth Bishop from my car stereo. I I laugh and I cry and I wave as the foreigners take pictures of me. And there in their frames, my place on Franklin Avenue is cemented. Even though the years have passed, since I used to take my dates to see David Lynch's house at midnight, after dinner or drinks, I'd make a careless drive-by, but I'd never reveal the address, never indicate where I had turned. "Have you seen Lost Highway?" I would ask them. They'd usually say, "No," or "Yeah." "You can't take pictures of it," I would tell them, as I'd cover their eyes with my hands so they couldn't read the street numbers off of the mailbox. It never led to anything. No retreats back to bed or lies about needing to come inside and use the bathroom. After I gestured towards mystery, that was enough to satisfy, to cement my place on Franklin as an impenetrable aspect of time, geography, women. Today, I still look for Outpost Drive, still scrawl when I should be steering, or roll up windows when I should be waving, put on sunglasses when the afternoon is shining. I still had to pull over in order to write this. I still had to turn up poetry over whatever else was coming up on our right. This one kind of ties in with David too, it's funny. This poem references a film called The Wild One, which is a 1953 film starring Marlon Brando. I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it kind of established like the bad boy persona in Hollywood and influenced James Dean and Elvis. It's this very archetypal image that got made. And David Lynch actually kind of references it in Twin Peaks: The Return, which is also funny, but I wrote this poem, I think in 2018, and it's called The Wild World. I'm still super American. I still love the myth of the outlaw, the maverick, the wild world, the wild one. Movies with motorcycles, men with names like Dean and Clint. They were Westerns, all of them, shot in Italy and Spain because only the California desert could be mistaken for Mars, a planet with connotations of hell and violence. I'm scared of these skirmishes every day. In my dreams, there are always shootings, and I awake to the sound of imaginary ambulances and the memories of real funerals. How many were there? And how many Oscar winners? I know this bigness of this continent, named after a sailor. I know how it envelops people and lets them know that they are small. I know enough about the open sesames and the blackface and the lies of entertainment. I don't miss the lies, but I do miss when storytelling was considered an art and not a ruse. The campfires, the words turned into shapes against the logs. What's the story then, hun? What's the problem there, sweetheart? The problem was that they didn't present me a history I could participate in. I wasn't a cowgirl, nor were my ancestors cows. I only watched war movies because I was forced to. I only dated soldiers because they stole me. And there I was, associated with the descendants of government spies and scabs. His great-grandfather was a Pinkerton, and oh God, there we were, contemplating breeding? My grandfather hid from Nazi rule, and here I am now, forced to forgive it all. Jace, is it okay if I pass out the little book? We have more goodies. Rachel, we're gonna go. She goes. So I want to give a special thank you to Jace and Rachel for making these beautiful little hand-printed booklets for tonight's special little small run. And this next poem I'm going to read actually has a photograph in it that Jace and Rachel printed. And I got really excited when I saw the prototypes for them because it's Jace's writing and my writing, and it kind of is transparent, and you see a juxtaposition of both the texts. And I immediately, my head went to like, oh my God, it's like when you're in a movie theater and you're like watching a quiet drama and you're like, are they gonna kiss? And it's all this anticipation, and then you hear the theater next door, and it's like a loud war movie, and it's like da 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 da, and there's like explosions and loud music, and it's like this beautiful like melding of all these genres and forms and stories going on. So that's what I thought when I saw them, and I love them. So please feel free to look at them and take one. This poem is called The New Topographers, and the title references a photography movement that I was really influenced by. I used to work on films and shoot a lot of photos, and so there's a few references in here. One of Louis Baltz, who is one of the new topographic photographers, and my photo, which is in the booklet, is kind of after that. Those photographers were some of the first to look at landscape in a new way, where there is not traditional beauty, but there was kind of post-war parking lots and decay, and it was often devoid of human presence. So this poem is a kind of reference to that. The New Topographers. I used to ride around on my camera, quoting Louis Baltz, looking for the next dumpster to inhale. I found ruins. They bred more ruins. I was born in the shell of a torn down bank. I used the camera, my car, to stay separate from the disaster. I slept where men slept. I found my own pillow. I shaped the asphalt in my name. I went to Vegas and donated blood. I sold my ex-lovers the prints of the wreckage. I bolted my motel door shut during the day, only emerging in the sky of night landscape. In a locket necklace, I wore a picture of a parking lot. The Hoover Dam has the other half. I promised my silver gelatin to Louis Daguerre. I smashed my Graflex Speed Graphic on stage like a guitar. Topography is tricky this way. I push my face through the negative, and nitrate sticks to my pores. What I mean to say is, there is nothing new about the cutting jaw of place, of decay, of isolation. Topography changes, human hand on human hand, ever ignoring the scent of an offering. The incense sticks lined up along the highway, acting as road flares to wave you down from the emergency ahead. This poem is the one that, besides the images, is printed in that special little booklet. And it's referencing a gay avant-garde filmmaker named Gregory Markopoulos. And yeah, I wrote it in 2019. I think it was like, I'm a poet, I'm tired of all this image making in this industry. So the title is called My Former Life as Addressed to Gregory Markopoulos. Different moons bring different poems. Oh, how I wish to be an experimental film, one without a budget, quiet, arousing types that lend themselves to lyric, and wade deep in the mangrove marshes of light and breezes, meaning, classical Greek architecture, and cities cut from heaps of the discarded images. This is a newer poem, and I titled it Speed 2 because I thought that was hilarious. I really like using numbers, especially in titles, because I find them like very not poetic, so I think it's like up for the challenge. And also I like to steal from Hollywood, so I'm taking that title, it's mine now. Film is a recording of light through time. The bus is the movement through space. The cinema is a chance to make out. This last poem is not a film poem. I wrote this on the airplane coming here, and so I decided it was a gift to everyone in this room. I'm from Northern California, and so I grew up going to City Lights with my mom, and that's like the bloodline of my early days as a poet. And so I got really excited thinking about Bob Kaufman's work, since he was born here in New Orleans and he died in San Francisco. So it was really funny for me because I've been carrying the new collected poems from City Lights with me. And so I was like, I'm reversing his life because he died in San Francisco and was born in New Orleans. So I brought the book back with me. So it's bringing him back to his origin. And so, yeah, please, give it up for Bob Kaufman. If you know jail poems from his 1965 book, Solitudes Cry with Loneliness, there's this very specific line that struck me while I was flying here. Let me spit breath mists of introspection, bits of me, so that when I am gone, I shall be in the air. And not only was that extremely moving and beautiful to me, but I was in the air, in the plane when I read it, and I immediately was like, oh my God, I'm flying through Bob Kaufman right now. And I thought that was kind of hilarious, besides being very touching. And so also while I've been here, I've been thinking about, Bob Kaufman being in the air, and I've had like these gusts of wind. I was with Henry and Rodrigo the other night at Anna's bar, and there's like a big gust of wind, and I was like, oh, it's Bob saying hi. So this poem is a tribute or a gift from me to the city of New Orleans and to everyone in this room tonight. It's also dedicated to Henry Goldkamp, who's not in this room tonight, but he told me he was going to watch the video, so he'll know. And there's also a lovely woman I met earlier this week named Tamika, and I told her I'd give her a shout out. So this is like my Oscar speech to close. I was like trying to cut it down. I was like, it's gonna be the Oscars, like the timer's gonna go off, and they're like, yank her off the stage. She went over like 60 seconds. So I will try to leave it to that. And I felt like it was also appropriate because the more I was thinking about my interest in film and my book Film Elegy, it's moving to me because I'm really interested in time. I'm really interested in what comes before us. And so I think this actually is very appropriate because it's not just about cinema, but it's about what we want to hold on to and what's precious to us. So this is my poem titled Flying Through Bob Kaufman. I had been thinking about public ownership, about how I like using up all that I've been given, my life, my body, my breath, my time. And the clocks and how they work were circular for a reason. I want the fact of empty, not trying to retain the impossible. No, hopefully not so, or so much foolishness anymore. When I live, I hope it showers down like the falling champagne of a crystal firework display, one that hypnotizes children, doesn't scare dogs. When I die, I will feel fuller, I presume. Not this pushing gasp of expending light. Bob Kaufman is in the air I breathe, and when I join him as a shower of a beam, I hope the precipitation in New Orleans will combine us all to display every color in the world. Thank you so much for being here.
Keep it going, keep it going. Laura and Jace. And the horse. The poets have books for sale over here. Don't make them carry all these books back to where they brought them from. These are how poets get paid out here. So please buy their books, hang out, talk with them. There is king cake over there by the bar. Don't make me take that home either. I've had enough king cake already this season. Please have a slice of king cake. It's already cut and everything. There's a baby in there, so watch out. Tip your bartenders, hang, slap the horse if you want, and we'll see y'all for the next Splice on March 8th. That's the Saturday after Fat Tuesday. Thank y'all so much for coming.